My name is Kalinda Ukanwa. I'm an assistant professor at University of Southern California, Marshall School of Business. I'm a quantitative marketing scholar, so if you were to think of an economist and a statistician if they had a baby, that's me. That's my training. And in terms of my area of research, I actually focus on the intersection of artificial intelligence and notions of responsible use of artificial intelligence. I specifically focus on algorithmic bias and algorithmic fairness. And what that means is how do we extract all the benefits of using artificial intelligence in our society without creating some kind of societal harm in terms of creating outputs that are fair to everybody. As somebody who's a woman, who's a Black woman in society, I have a personal interest in ensuring that the allocation of resources, the allocation of outcomes through artificial intelligence will work just as effectively for me as it would for anybody else. Why is it important to society? Because I think everybody wants to be treated fairly. It's important and critical in society, given that more and more decisions are being made by artificial intelligence every day. So, for example, it's making decisions about the loans you get. It's making decisions about the schools you get into. It's making decisions about whether or not you are going to get that job. These are critical things. And so we just want to make sure that is it being used in a responsible way? The analogy I like to use is, the emergence of the automobile. At one point, it was a new technology. People were great. And they said, now I can get farther, faster than ever before to the destinations I want. Those are the benefits that came from the automobile. But at the time that it was invented, there weren't such things as stoplights, seatbelts, et cetera. Wonderful what the technology was, but along the way came to learn, there could be some harms that come from this. We don't want that. We want to use that automobile. We don't want to give it up. But how do we make it safer, more usable for everybody so we can extract all the benefits? And I think that's a great analogy for what I'm doing with respect to artificial intelligence. I believe AI is good for society at the end of the day. Even though I research about algorithmic bias and fairness, I think AI is good for society. It has so much promise, but it also has some perils. We just need to manage the perils as we develop the promises. And so that's where I stand, and that's where I think AI stands. Today I'm going to talk about the impact of artificial intelligence and potentially the bias that it might generate. How does that impact consumers in terms of the beliefs they form about the algorithms? And could that possibly spread over a population? And does that influence what consumers do in terms of their decision-making? I'm examining that diffusion of this unfairness beliefs. And how does it rise? Is it always about a biased algorithm? And I show conditions where sometimes it can rise when the algorithm is not biased. And then I look at, what if we had a third-party intervention that is able to report out to everybody what the status of the algorithm is in terms of whether it's biased or not? What is the impact on the spread of beliefs in the consumers, and what kind of implications would it have for firms who are interacting or providing services through an algorithm? There's so many research frontiers around there. I think this question about the broader class of responsible AI, which is an emerging area of research that includes questions about fairness, questions about privacy for citizens, questions about safety of the algorithm, questions about accountability, transparency, trust. All of that is a really rich area for new research, innovative research, and it's cross-disciplinary in nature because we need to hear from sociologists, psychologists, philosophers, ethicists, in addition to the research that we have now, which is computer scientists, myself, an economist, statistician. We have those people, but we need to hear more from others on how do we need to do this. I, for sure, as a result of my research, think there's incentives. I think there are economic incentives. There's legal incentives. From a legal standpoint, from a liability standpoint, firms have incentives. And that is that if an algorithm is found to be discriminatory to people, of course, we do have discrimination laws, and you don't want to be put in that bucket. So that's that's only from a legal standpoint incentive. From an economic standpoint, over the long run, it's going to be less profitable to have an algorithm that can produce bias. Why is that? Because it impacts what people say. If it impacts what people say, they spread it to others. And over time, people learn to stay away from that firm, even if they are not sure exactly how the algorithm works. And that it influences demand over time to a firm that has a fair algorithm. And so I show that on the short run, it might be more profitable to have a biased algorithm, but in the long run, it's unprofitable. AI is this new technology that's really going to innovate and jumpstart and move forward with leaps and bounds their organization, their firm. But I think decision makers in the room really need to think through, okay, as we use this new technology, what are some of the downstream consequences and implications that may come out of that? And how do we manage that too? Just don't start up the new car and just go, but think about, okay, how do we avoid hitting people on the road? How do we avoid tumbling off the cliff? I hope they would think through those things before deploying.